Zambia's wildlife is protected and regulated by the Wildlife Act of 2015, which establishes the Department of National Parks and Wildlife as a statutory body mandated to manage and protect wildlife populations in Zambia. World Wildlife Fund WWF Zambia collaborates with the Department of Wildlife and National Parks to address various challenges and threats facing the wildlife sector in the country, such as poaching, illegal wildlife trade, and human-wildlife conflicts. In 2019, WWF Zambia concluded its strategic plan for the wildlife program. Moses Nyirenda, WWF Wildlife Program's leader, highlights some key successes of the year.
Policy issues. So in 2019, we have actually concluded and launched a number of policy documents, which include the wildlife policy, which was developed together with other stakeholders, including government and TNC. We've also developed and completed and launched the rhino conservation strategy, and we are now in the process of developing 2 policy documents.
The Department of National Parks and Wildlife has embarked on a restocking exercise, and WWF has played a role to ensure that the animal population increases.
We have actually worked with government to implement the elephant and other large mammal surveys in Kafue National Park, as well as Siomangwezi and Lower West Zambezi GMA. In addition to that, we have also supported the Department of National Parks and Wildlife to conduct its annual hippo count in the Luangwa River. I think, as you know, that at one point we actually had a very controversial issue regarding a government decision to cow hippos in the Luangwa. Now, we need to base these decisions, such as culling, on scientific data. And WWF has been providing resources for DNPW to provide, to conduct the hippo surveys every year in the Luangwa. In the last 2 years, including this year, we have actually supported the Department of National Parks and Wildlife to restock the Siomangwezi National Park. And the restocking actually has taken the form of restocking of 200 impala from Lower Zambezi National Park into Siomangwezi. We've also restocked about 100 wildebeest, blue wildebeest, from Namibia into Siomangwezi. We've also restocked about 45 zebras from Namibia into Siomangwezi.
The restocking exercise is helping in improving wildlife recovery. This is evident at the southeast border, where elephants have re-established an old migration route, now very visible with several tracks in a corridor extending over more than a kilometer. The projects that WWF embarks on require other stakeholders in order for them to succeed. So how did WWF ensure collaboration, and who are some of the key stakeholders involved?
We've also worked in the Kafue ecosystem, where we are partnering with the Department of National Parks and Wildlife, DNPW, and Game Rangers International in establishing what we call the Kafue Connected Conservation Initiative. This initiative is premised on the fact that the advances in communication technology has actually revolutionized the way the world communicates. Now, we believe that the Internet of Things, that is communication and other technological aspects, can also revolutionize how we manage wildlife. So we have actually implemented a program that is going to help the Republic of Zambia to actually increase the detection rate of poaching in the Kafue National Park through setting up a modern, state-of-the-art, high-tech control room that is able to conduct surveillance activities along the Iteji as well as southern parts of Kafue to detect poaching threats in the Kafue. And as a result of this project, we've actually noted that the elephant population, elephant poaching in the Kafue has actually gone down, particularly in the southern Kafue. It has actually gone down.
Apart from protecting wildlife, WWF also has a special interest in the ecosystem, which aims at having an ecological balance, meaning a stable balance in the numbers of each species in an ecosystem. The most important part being that the natural balance in an ecosystem is maintained. Lorraine Katillo is Freshwater Program Team Leader at WWF Zambia.
We interface with ZAMCOM, the Zambezi Watercourse Commission. We interface with a platform called the JOTC, the Joint Operations Technical Committee, which looks at all the big hydropower on the Zambezi and how they are operating and how there can be more information sharing and how they can be synchronized or conjunctive dam operations for the maximum possible outcomes in terms of power production, in terms of sustainability. Out of that, we have actually, one of the outcomes of that is that we now have a new project which is focused on the Kwando. The rationale of that is that most of the flows into Zambia, a significant amount, come actually from upstream in Angola. There's a lot of rivers that start in Angola and then flow into Zambia and further down. So if we don't bring Angola to the table, we may be planning, we may be managing resources, but if we don't engage in a discussion with Angola in terms of how the flows upstream are being managed, then perhaps we may not have the best possible outcome. So we have a partnership with the 4 governments, that is Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, and Angola, and with the Zambezi Watercourse Commission, and that partnership has brought about a project which is around how the governance of water in the Kwando system, which is upstream. So it's been a very busy year for the Freshwater program because we've been engaged in a lot of things that speak to national policy around water, but we've also been involved in attempts to operationalize that policy. So for example, government is currently working on developing catchment management plans for the 6 catchments in Zambia. That includes the Kafue, the Luangwa, the Zambezi, the Chambeshi, and so on and so forth. So they started with the Kafue catchment. So our act speaks to the fact that for when you allocate water, you should first prioritize domestic or primary needs, and then also you prioritize the environment. So we've been supporting government in that capacity by trying to establish what the water reserve for the environment is for the Kafue, together with others like GIZ that are also partnering with government on the same. Then on the national level, we have been in dialogue with partners like ZEMA, where we have contributed to the review of guidelines. We have contributed to the issue of strategic environmental assessments. And we have been engaging with the Ministry of Water, with the Ministry of Energy. On the part of the Ministry of Energy, government is interested in developing an integrated resource plan for the country around energy. You know how energy issues are. So we have been in that space as well, and we've been supporting government in terms of trying to define the way forward in terms of renewables. That work is still sort of at early stages, but what we are hoping to contribute is a hydropower plan for the country, and we are having a very good discussion on that front. And then we have also been doing like some technical analysis that speaks to identifying which rivers should be protected along the lines of tourism economies. You know, those areas in our country which have got certain natural capital assets that can support a tourism economy. And I think we were in the news in 2018 about the Luangwa, this campaign to keep the Luangwa free flowing. So from that we had a discussion with the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Water, which culminated in actually the dam that was tabled for the Luangwa being called off.
Climate change affects everyone, and so the fight against it involves a lot of stakeholders. How does WWF work with the private sector to ensure that the goal is achieved?
So we work with the private sector, and the rationale behind that is that some significant impacts come from the private sector, and then also they have the resource base that supports under the polluter pays principle, that supports mitigation efforts and addressing some of the climate change impacts that are currently obtaining. In addition to that, they are also affected by climate change. So our work with the private sector has been on what we call the Kafue Joint Action Group, with a focus on the Kafue Plus. There we are working with private sector entities like Zambia Breweries, Zambia, Lusaka Water and Storage, ZESCO, Zamsugar, and the intention there is to make the value chain of those private sector sustainable. So part of what we have discussed has been around how can we be more water efficient within our operations, but also how can we work outside our fence lines. And what we mean by that is how can private sector go beyond their premises into their value chain and look at who is in the value chain and how we can work with them to address climate change impacts, but also to mitigate some of the issues around pollution or water quantity. For example, ZESCO has been doing some work in the not necessarily under KHAK, if I may say, but as an example, they've been doing some work in the source of the Zambezi around reforestation. So how can we get more private sector doing those things?
2019 has been a busy year for WWF, but after all is said and done, the achievements made show that the commitment by the organization is not in vain. What is the plan moving forward in order to continue scoring these successes?
The Dutch Fund for Climate and Development also is a fund that is to the tune of 160 million. That is supposed to help catalyze and leverage more funding for projects that actually going to have a very positive environmental impact in the landscapes in which these projects will land. So Kafue is going to be one of the first, and already through a partnership with the Dutch Bank, FMO, we are doing a pre-feasibility assessment for a wastewater treatment plant. The idea with that is that we are addressing pollution hotspots, and at the end of the day, the impact outcome will be like the water quality levels will be better in the Kafue.
WWF Zambia Country Director is pleased to share some of the successes that the organization made in 2019. She's also shared some of the prospects that the organization has for 2020.
We've been able, after many years of research, to move forward our agenda to increase the water security of our country through the work that we've done in helping the government identify critical and sensitive water resources that are under threat. We have been working closely with the Ministry of Environment and the Water Management Authority to actually look at development of catchment management plans. For example, we work with them in the Kafue Basin to come up with a catchment management plan there. We've also partnered with academics, communities, and NGO to bring focus to the threats that were coming as a result of the proposed dam on the Luangwa River. The fact that the government cancelled the plans to dam the Luangwa River is a huge win. It's a huge win not only for WWF of conservation, it's a huge win for over 2 million people whose livelihoods in the Luangwa catchment depend on this important river. I also just wanted to mention that Luangwa itself is a big, iconic global destination for wildlife and tourism lovers. And so it drives a lot of tourists to our country, bringing the much needed foreign exchange. If the river was dammed, the country ran a risk of losing that. Our mission as WWF globally is to contribute to stopping the degradation of nature so that there is a peaceful coexistence between us human beings and the natural environment. It's critically important that we do not use and abuse the natural resources to an extent that we put the lives of our younger generation, of future generations, in jeopardy. Future businesses will depend on the same water and forest resources. So it is our responsibility for us to take care of these resources well today. In 2020, we're also looking forward to enhancing and developing high-impact partnerships with private sector organizations. With the launch of the Dash Fund on Climate and Development in 2019, it's a great opportunity for us to come together and design high-impact programs that are not only going to deliver a commercial return to the businesses, but will also help to deliver a return on the environment, by doing so helping them manage their business risk. We're also looking at creating partnerships where the citizenship agenda for corporates becomes meaningful, and therefore working with them to develop and implement bankable projects that are good for the planet and that are good for business and are good for people will be our #1 priority.
WWF's mission is to stop the degradation of the planet's natural environment and to build a future in which humans live in harmony with nature by conserving the world's biological diversity, ensuring that the use of renewable natural resources is sustainable, and promoting the reduction of pollution and wasteful consumption. 2020 is around the corner, and WWF Zambia is geared to ensure that its mission is accomplished.